I'm Gary Birtles, one of the old gits from a long time ago. You've got to tune into Tricky Talks, I believe, so just do it. All the best.
Robertson, the first time we've seen them attack them, and there's Francis! Well, that's what I wanted to see Robertson do. And still Robertson, getting his shot in, and a goal! Robertson!
Hello, welcome along to the Tricky Talks podcast as Forest suffer a bad night in Braga and see their hopes of automatically qualifying for the last 16 of the Europa League washed away in the Braga rain. Here with me, definitely not going sideways and backwards to discuss the performance, is Kate. How are you doing?
Tired. I had to get up at 4 to get our flight. We had a flight out of Gatwick at 7:20 this morning, and we were obviously in Braga, had to get to Porto. So, yeah, having spent quite a long time trying to get to sleep and trying to just process everything that had happened during the game, after the game, before the game. Then when the alarm went off at 4, I was like, why do I do this? I make very poor life choices.
Yeah, I do want to... We'll get into the game, of course. I do want to start off by reading something to you, Kate, which is an incredible couple of stats that I came across today from Opta Joe, and Forest became just the second team in Europa League history to lose a match without facing a shot on target, but also to miss a penalty, score an own goal, and receive a red card in one match. I mean, it was just a mad game, wasn't it? The performance left a lot to be desired. But let's start off with those mad 54 seconds when Forest got a penalty. Obviously, Gibbs-White missed. They went up the other end and scored. And it was just a total disaster of a 54-second period. And I don't know what it was like in the stand, Kate, but the defending for that goal was an absolute disgrace all around. It was schoolboy defending from pretty much everybody. I mean, I don't know whether you've seen the replay since then to watch it back, but what were your thoughts going through those 54 seconds? Because you go from one extreme to the other. Because let's just face it, the game was there for the taking. Braga offered nothing pretty much going forwards. If Forest wanted it, they could have had it. We'll get on to the team selection, but then you get the penalty and you think, okay, this if this goes in, this will be enough to win the game. And of course, Gibbs-White yet again missed in Europe. And then things just turned around completely from that point. They went up the other end and scored. I can't imagine how you guys must have been feeling in the stands at that point.
So when the penalty was awarded, there was a sweeping feeling of exactly what you've just said. This is it. This is it. I could already visualise myself jumping up and down, screaming, grabbing hold of the boys. And I don't always feel like that about penalties. You know, we often miss. Gibbs-White seems to have missed quite a lot lately. But when it was initially given, I thought, okay, yes, this is okay. But then there was all that faffing about, wasn't there? So the referee was moving people back, and then it was, is McAtee going to take it himself? Is Gibbs-White going to take it? Then he spotted the ball. Then the ref came over and spoke to him, and he unspotted the ball, and there was a little bit more hoo-ha. And the longer that went on, that feeling of, yes, this is our moment, started to just dip. And I started to think, I don't like this anymore. I don't like this. Just take the pen, just take the pen, just take the pen. And then obviously it was saved. And it was saved. You know, it was a reasonable effort as penalties go. You know, we've criticised him for going down the middle a lot. He didn't go down the middle. It was taken with a bit of a hit. It was a good save. But that moment of seeing it be saved, and you just thought, that was it. That was our chance. That was our chance to win this game. But even at that point, you didn't think, now we're going to lose the game. You know, but within, like you say, within seconds, and it was under a minute, it's up their end, and Yates is sticking it in the back of their net. And it was just double take moment, you know, like what the hell just happened? And the only thing that brought me back down to earth was the guy stood behind me went, just checking, are we in the Trent for that one? It's like, oh my God, what is this? What reality am I living right now? And then there was just this awful realization that we'd gone one down and how on earth we were going to get back into this game, because we had offered nothing ourselves, and I've seen some people trying to be positive today. I've listened to a lot of stuff on the journey home. I haven't seen Yates's interview, but I've read the transcript of it. I've seen Dyche's interview. I've heard people saying, maybe this guy wasn't so bad. I think somebody said McAtee was all right. He wasn't. Yates said we were in control, didn't he? We were in control of the game. And the thing that really made my blood boil was Dyche used the word adequate. I don't know if have you heard Dyche's interview?
No, as soon as the game finished, I just switched off completely. I was not in the mood to listen to excuses or anything like that. I just turned it all off.
So Dyche said of the first half and up until we conceded the goal that he felt the performance was adequate. So we've got Yates saying we were in control and we weren't that bad. We've got Dyche saying the performance was adequate. And I can tell you that performance was far from adequate. Before we conceded the goal, after we conceded the goal, there was nothing about that was adequate, that was acceptable. Were we in control of the game? I mean, you heard us singing backwards, sideways. That's what we were doing. We were passive again. God, that word again. You know what? Were we in control? What's the point of being in control if it goes nowhere? Just, for me, beyond defending that performance.
I can see why Yates thought they were in control, because the game was there for the taking. It became very apparent very quickly that Braga were happy to sit back and get a point, because they're in a really good spot for top 8 qualification. They didn't need to win. They weren't interested in going forwards. There was a mismatch between their forward line and our defence in terms of physicality and size. They never looked like having any ability to score whatsoever. All it needed was Forest to be more offensive, get more men forward. Clearly, Ndoye up front was not working. He was drifting out of position so frequently and leaving the box empty. It just needed somebody to recognise the need that they could take a few risks, because Braga offered nothing, but it never happened. So whilst they may say, they were in control, to a certain extent they were, because had they changed their style of play a little bit, become more offensive, they'd have won the game. They just didn't do it for whatever reason. And whether that's down to the manager, whether that's down to the lack of ability of the players on the pitch, and we know who we're talking about, clearly, they just never seemed to take it by the scruff of the neck, even though that opportunity was staring them in the face and they could easily have grabbed it if they wanted to. And I asked the question to you guys at half-time. I said, it's there if they want it. They just never got to that point where they seemed they wanted it.
And what really worries me about that is sitting there in the stand, we were so angry with them. I'm still angry. I'm still really angry with them for that performance, for that team selection, for the late substitutions. We'll get on to all of it. I'm raging mad about it. Absolutely raging mad about it. But the post-match stuff, what that says to me is that was the plan. We went there for a 0-0 draw. We went there for a point, and that just makes me even madder, because I didn't go there for that. And I consider myself to be incredibly lucky to be able to go to all the games that I go to. I go home, I go away. That is my 4th trip on the bounce to watch them play in Europe. I consider myself very, very lucky to be in a position to do that. Okay. But I do want them to bring it when I do. I want them to do that for the fans that travelled. And you've seen it on social media. You saw it on the TV. the rain was torrential, absolutely torrential. Like when we took off from Gatwick, it was like being on a roller coaster. And it was the same when we landed, and we were soaked. You know, when you get wet and you just never dry out. And that's what it was like the entire time we were there. It was torrential rain. And yet, I don't know if, I'm sure you've seen, I don't know if people listening have seen the videos that we put up on our socials of the Forest fans singing. Like at points, they were singing so loud that I could hear them from my apartment. Just sat having a rest and a drink and a bite to eat with the boys, and we could hear them from the apartment. That is how up for it we were. That is how there for it we were as a fan base, okay? And that's what we got. We got a team that either had been told to just hang in there for a 0-0, or had got out on the pitch and, like you say, just didn't want it, didn't want to fight for it, didn't have any ideas, were happy to just pootle about, pass backwards, sideways, and hope the final whistle went with a 0-0 scoreline. And again, that is not okay. What is that? That is not the Forest that we love. It just isn't. And I'm sorry, absolutely unforgivable.
I'm going to stop you there because breaking news. I want to talk about the position up front and the fact that they put Ndoye there. But breaking news, Forest have just announced the signing of Lorenzo Luca from Udinese. They've just put it on their social media. So he has joined. So we'll see what difference he makes. I don't know at this stage whether he's eligible to play in European competition, but it is a loan signing with a view to a permanent move, I believe.
Can he play on Sunday?
Can he play on Sunday? We'll get onto that in due course, but they have announced a signing and he is a striker. So let's get on to the fact that Ndoye played up front. It didn't work, did it? Clearly. I don't know what other alternatives there would have been, given the fact that he was a forward player. Who else could have played in that role? But it leads me, it didn't work, clearly.
Did anyone tell him that he was supposed to be playing the striker role? Because He didn't look like he knew.
And it just makes me think that that whole Europa League squad has been mismanaged. If you have 4 strikers in your squad effectively, one of which is injured and potentially out for the season, who knows? So he can't be considered. You have Taiwo, who is not even in the squad, who was admitted from the start. So you're immediately down to 50% of your attacking option or your forward players, your strikers down. You have Kani Mwendo, who gets shipped out on loan, and Sean Dyche comes out and says that's a good move for the club. Well, how can it be a good move from the club when your only other striker in the squad gets injured before a Europa League game, leaving you with no strikers? And that would have been a perfect scenario for Kani Mwendo to have come in and played up front in that game yesterday, but he can't because whoever it was decided he was best off elsewhere at Eintracht Frankfurt, where incidentally he scored a couple of goals, I believe. So I do wonder if somebody has seriously mismanaged that Europa League squad. Obviously, we've talked previously about Amari Hutchinson being omitted, and there are reasons for that which we'll never discover. But it just makes you wonder what's going on with the decision makers, because to leave yourself in a European competition with no strikers is just inexcusable.
It absolutely is. And when the news started to break on the Wednesday that he wasn't going to be travelling, that he was injured, there was that moment of, what on earth are we going to do? And everybody assumed we'd put Ndoye up front, and we did put Ndoye up front, and it didn't work. Like you say, it didn't work. Even more annoying than that is we still should have won it. With no recognised striker, we still should have won it, could have won it. Why didn't we win it? I'm more concerned about the impact that's going to have on us in the Premier League than that game. It was thrown away. It was thrown away. I am cross about the team selection. The Ndoye situation, I don't believe he had a lot of other choice. There were other choices he could make in other positions. And yeah, that angers me more. Ndoye isn't a striker. He wasn't very good in the role. Yeah, I don't know what more we can say than that. I mean,
let's expand on the team selection, because in my show notes that I've written down, let's go back to I wonder if they've written off the Europa League, because if you think about Wrexham, Sean Dyche came out afterwards and said he put out the players in that first half to prove they could do a job, and they effectively didn't. And we know we're talking about the likes of Bakwa, McAtee, Douglas Luiz to a certain extent. Jay Cunha you could probably throw in there, maybe Morato as well, potentially. And they didn't prove themselves in that game. And you think, okay, they've had their chance. How much are they really going to feature subsequently? And they didn't feature against Arsenal, as you would have expected. I can't remember whether Douglas Luiz featured or not. No, Sangari was in, wasn't he, for that? Yeah, he puts them back in the team for this game. And if you've given them a chance against a championship team and they don't take it, and you pretty much slag them off in the press, why are you then playing them again in a Europa League game, unless you think the Europa League game is not a priority and it doesn't mean anything? Because you're playing players in the team who you've come out and said in the media that you don't rate, they failed to take the chance. Why are you selecting them again?
I mean, is that his management style? Is that the kind of man manager that he is? To, shame them and humiliate them? There was an element of it feeling like he was trying to be the voice of the fans when he came out with that press conference after Wrexham, that he'd heard the booing, he'd heard, and he almost wanted to get us back on side and say, no, you're absolutely right, it wasn't good enough, da 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 da. But actually, in a man management situation, does that ever work? Like calling someone out, humiliating them, telling them they're not good enough, does that make them better? We spoke about it before, and I said that I wanted a strong side. When I saw that announced, I wasn't happy. It did feel like Wrexham again, and it proved to be exactly that. It was a very, very similar performance in terms of levels, in terms of desire, in terms of frustration. And how could we have expected it to be any different? We've got every right to expect it to be different, because they're our players and we're there and we want them to do well. And okay, so we've spoken about them not being maybe the right fit for the team, but they're not fundamentally bad players. So something is seriously wrong with what is going on behind the scenes for them to be selected, for them to perform like that, and for that to take us where it has. And it is a huge worry for me as a fan, a huge worry.
I think we could probably expect a similar team selection next week, because for all intents and purposes, they're not going to get in the top 8 now. There is an outside chance they will, but it's going to take something very, very extraordinary for them to climb from 16th to 8th, given the fact they can only equal the team in 8th spot in terms of points. And you've got, you've got all these teams in between. Not all of them are going to drop points. Some are going to get more than 14. So it's going to be very, very unlikely that they're going to get top 8. However, they have qualified for the knockout phase, so they do have that spot has been secured. So it makes me think that next week's game, there is very little riding on it, other than trying to get a bit of form. And you have to think that we're going to see something again next week at home.
Yeah, sadly, I think you're right. I don't know what that means. It certainly doesn't make me want to go. I mean, obviously I will go. I've already got my tickets. It certainly doesn't make me want to go. There's an argument that the pressure's off, so maybe they'll go out and absolutely run riot. But even if they do, it's not enough. It's not okay. The chance was yesterday, and they passed it by. They literally went, we're not that bothered. So yeah, play them against Ferenc, I can't say it. Ferencváros.
Yeah, I'm not even going to try either. Robbie Keane's team. Robbie Keane's the manager, so let's stick with Robbie's team.
Okay, fine. If you must, send them out for that one. Or send out the B team. At least they got a bit of something about them,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, but there is no making up for that. And having experienced it at Wrexham, and then to experience it in Portugal, it is a bitter pill. It really is.
I think the only thing they've got to play for really next week is to try and get a positive result to ensure they have a home game second in the round of 32. So at the moment, they are in that last spot for playing the second game at home. And if the table was to stay as it is now, they're going to face a trip to Czechia for the first leg against Victoria Paizen, if that's the way you pronounce it.
Yeah.
So
that would be the 18th, 19th of February, would it?
I've got it in my calendar, but yeah,
It'd
it'll
be
be
the
the
first leg away and the second leg at
second
home
leg
as
at
it
home.
stands.
But if they drop any lower, then they're going to be playing the first leg at home and the second leg away. So they do have a little bit of control, a little destiny in their own hands if they want to have a second game at home. But either way, they could. And obviously, it's too early to know exactly who they're going to play at the moment. But you do wonder now whether they are. It leads me to another question: are our expectations as fans too high? We're looking forward. The songs say we're off to Istanbul because we think we can win this tournament, but the team selection is saying otherwise at the minute. I don't think they are capable of winning this tournament if they keep playing the teams that they are playing. And again, I go back to the question: have they effectively written off the Europa League?
It felt like it. It felt like it sat in the stands. It felt like they didn't want it. It felt like it wasn't important. It felt like it wasn't the objective, which again to me is absolutely bonkers because we have waited nearly 30 years to play in Europe. And if you're Sean Dyche and we are to believe the things that he said when he took over as manager about pride in the badge, never getting to play for it, wearing the badge now, how much it means to him to be here, to be a part of Forest, then you would think that what he wants most in the world is to be successful and to still be our manager next season. You would think that would be right at the top of his priority list. Now, the way that he's going to achieve that is by doing well in Europa, because I think we're all past the point of thinking a meteoric rise up the Premier League is on the cards, okay?
It's not, is it?
No. But in a lot of ways, we can forgive him for that because he has brought some level of, we're not in relegation. There's a little bit of a buffer zone between us and West Ham, although how long that will be there, we don't know. But at this point, you can look at things and go, I can see some progress in the Premier League. But 17th is never going to be enough for Marinakis or the fans to keep him in a job. There has to be something else as well. That's not going to be the FA Cup because of Wrexham. So the automatic thought process would be to take us somewhere in Europe. I don't know if I've ever really believed that we could win the whole competition, but I did think we could give it a damn good go. And I am yet to see that. And so it makes no sense to me that it isn't a priority for him. Absolutely none. I don't understand.
You're right. I mean, it could be just the fact that we seeing the real Forest? Like I said, have our expectations been too high as fans? Are we literally seeing before our eyes what we are, the level that we are? Because like you said earlier, the likes of McAtee and Bakwa and Louise are fundamentally decent players. They're just not showing it at the minute. What do you think there? Because that is who we are at the minute. The results and the performances are speaking for themselves right now, especially away from home.
I'm going to be very careful about how I say this because I have a conflicting opinion on it in my own head. But to me, you have to look at the management and the coaching team as having some level of responsibility for that. One of the things that was said a lot when Dyche took over was he's never had a squad this good to manage before. There was all the Dyche ball stuff, all the negative stuff, but that was the one thing that people did keep saying. He's never had a squad like this good to manage before. Okay, well, he's got it now, and this is what he's getting out of them. He's getting these players who most of us were reasonably excited about when we signed. Certainly Douglas Luiz, that was a big one we were excited about. James McAtee, if we're honest, we thought, yeah, that seems like a good shout. Okay, and then we've got Anderson, Gibbs White. I'm not gonna sit here and list the squad. He's got a great squad of players. He's got a squad of players that had an incredible amount of success last season, and then we've added to that some players that should add quality, should add value, should add depth. And yes, we can look to the management situation at the beginning of the season, what happened with Nuno, what happened with Ange, and we can forgive him a certain amount of instability and what that must have done to the players' mentality. And that can definitely buy him some time. But how much time?
That's the thing I was going to ask. That time is now over, isn't it? Effectively. Yeah, every manager gets a grace period or honeymoon period, but we're well past that now for Deitch, and you're right. Do we start to... We've always tried to remain positive on this podcast. We've always backed Deitch 100%, but do we now need to start asking the question and mentioning the S word? And I'm not saying Sean as the S word.
What S word I said, Simon, because there were a few coming out of my mouth last night.
Yeah, I can imagine. But people are afraid to Are people afraid to talk about him being sacked because of the embarrassment it would cause the club to come under with it being it would lead to their fourth manager in one season? Are people afraid to talk about the repercussions if he was to be sacked? Because, and I know there has been progress, as like you say, in the Premier League, but there's been very little progress in Europe. You have to take into account the quality of the opposition, but is it time to start thinking about that S word? And I'm talking about sacked.
Yeah. I'm not there yet. I'm not. I understand the school of thought, and I think you're absolutely right. We do have to ask the question. We can see the question is being asked. We can see the emotions of the fans coming out and saying exactly that. He's got to go, he's got to go, he's got to go. I honestly don't think at this point it would help us if he went. I don't think that's the right thing. I still live in hope that it's going to come good, that it's going to come together. And the talk that he's talked is genuinely how he feels. And he's genuinely, really, really wants this to work. But there has to be lessons learned.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was a repeat of Wrexham. In the team selection, in the performance, and there have been performances like that in the Premier League where we have been complacent, where we have been passive. There has to be lessons learned. We have to see that change. And we saw it. We saw it at Arsenal. I know we didn't score, but we spoke about it, about the battle, about the grit, about the playing for the badge. It was there. Yes, the team was different, granted, but the mentality was there. And now it's gone again. And we face this lovely trip to Brentford on Sunday with, let's be honest, absolutely no idea which version of our team is going to turn up.
And that's the thing, isn't it? If you have to think about introducing somebody else, it's almost getting to the point of no return where even that is not going to have any benefit because the games are running out, aren't they? And somebody else coming in is just not going to have the time, are they, to implement whatever it is they want to implement. So I'm like you. I think I'd certainly review it at the end of the season, absolutely. But in terms of this season, I think you just have to go with what we've got and keep our fingers crossed that the penny will drop at some point and things will turn.
Mm-hmm. I just hope that he isn't now of the mentality that the rest of his season can be a dull 0-0 draw and that he's going to lose his job at the end of it anyway. So, yeah, I really hope that's not where he's at. I really do.
We've not even talked about the Anderson sending off, have we? Which was bizarre in itself. Those 54 seconds were the most weird 54 seconds in recent memory that I can think of in terms of watching Forest. But to throw in the Anderson red card at the end was just, I don't know what was going on because he must have said something. I've not seen any reports or any confirmation or any apology for the language that was used. So I don't really know what Anderson said, but he did say something because you could see on the replay as the ball went upfield, he looked at the ref and said something, or you assume he talked to the ref because otherwise why would he look at him? But the ref had no hesitation in bringing out that card. And Anderson himself seemed quite bamboozled and flabbergasted as to being sent off. Whether it was a case of, we don't know how well the referee spoke or understood English, whether their interpretation of what everyday language in English for the Premier League referee faces is different to what he's used to, and he may have taken offence. But obviously it means we're not going to see Anderson for the next European game. Thankfully, I don't think it impacts the league games.
No.
So we'll see Anderson on Sunday, but yeah, it's just another weird moment of the game.
I mean, I'm assuming they'll appeal it. I'm assuming that will happen. How successful that appeal will be remains to be seen because, like you say, we don't know what was said. And it was another moment of what on earth is going on? A bit like I think they were on the pitch when he got the red card out. First of all, you thought, has he got the wrong colour out? And then it was like, who? Who is he red carding? What is he being red carded for? Because we, from up in the stands, we didn't have the view that you had. We couldn't see that he'd said something. It filtered in, must have been coming from people messaging people who were watching on TV to watching in the ground, that it was something that he'd said. But for quite a few minutes, we had absolutely no idea, why he'd been sent off. And it didn't seem like anybody really had any idea why he'd been sent off. And yeah, the assumption is that it was something pretty awful. And in some respects, I think that's not okay. And then in other respects, I think, well, actually, maybe you do need to show a little bit of respect to the referee. And yeah, you are in this game and your fans are booing and you are losing and you shouldn't be. And it wasn't a very pleasant atmosphere to be in. But whatever he said clearly was not okay. So I don't know what I'm defending because I don't know what it was. Like you say, I don't think it impacts us. I don't think he would play anyway against Varoufakis. I don't think he would. I don't see the point. It doesn't affect us in the league, but it will be interesting to know whether we ever find out what was said and whether or not it is something that's successfully appealed or not.
Yeah, just to put an end to the Braga talk. Watching it on TNT with Fletch commentating, as you know, he's a Forest fan, and Steve McManaman was there co-commentating, and he was saying all the right things about how Forest should win this game if they could be more offensive and take it by the scruff of the neck. Even Steve McManaman was admitting he's not a Forest fan, but he was getting so frustrated with their performance. Quite clearly, the direction was there to win the game, and he couldn't really understand why they were just not taking it. He was getting himself wound up so much. He himself was flabbergasted that Forest lost that game, and he wasn't even a Forest fan. Imagine how you must have been feeling in the stands at that full-time whistle. You could hear the booing on the TV.
Yeah, and I didn't boo. I don't boo. I never have done. I will admit to joining in with what the was that, because
I could hear you on the social media clip you posted.
There's no denying it. There's no denying it. Because what was that? Actually, what was that? And I couldn't help myself because the anger, the frustration, all of it compounded with the whole trip there was nothing else to say. There was no redeeming features at that moment. Everybody around me was just so angry and disheartened and embarrassed and almost ashamed of them, And we did great. As fans, we did great. I'm pretty sure we outnumbered them.
Yeah,
certainly opposite us. There was nobody. There was a small faction, I think, of home fans sort of up and to my left that did make noise when Yates scored for them. So I do think there was a little pocket of home fans on our side. But the whole of Braga was Forest. We were there to cheer them on, and we did. We were the 12th man, we were, and yeah.
Well, Braga were expecting a record attendance of 12,000, and the rain put a lot of people off. Darren Fletcher was talking before the kick-off around how everybody had stayed away from the home end because of the weather, because of that pouring rain. He said Forest fans were certainly outnumbering Braga. They were sat in the middle of the stand where you were, so you had the Forest fans to the left. You had another chunk of Forest fans to the right. Darren Fletcher and Steve McManaman were in the middle, and said there were even Forest fans who had come into the middle section of the stand, which is technically was the home end, but Forest fans had filtered into that. And he told a really good story around how Forest fans had been buying tickets in that area in advance, but the club soon got wind of it and stopped it. But some genius Forest fans had the idea of becoming Braga members, So they became a member and got a match ticket for €10. Hence why there were a lot more Forest fans than there were official tickets, if you like, and hence why they seriously outnumbered the Braga fans, because I gather it's not a team that's widely followed anyway, even though they've got these two massive stands.
No, everybody seemed to be a Porto fan that we came across in Braga, and you could just go to the shop. You could just go to the shop and buy a matchday ticket in your Forest shirt with your scarf on, quite openly being a Forest fan. And I know a lot of people that did that had travelled initially without tickets that just went into the shop and bought their ticket, and there was no sense of having to pretend that you supported Braga. It was just okay, yeah, it's another ticket sold. So
from Braga then to Brentford on Sunday.
Yeah, can't wait.
Can't wait. Yeah, we shall both. We'll all be there. Mollo will be there as well.
You will.
But it's going to be another hard game, isn't it? Brentford are on decent run of form. They're 7th in the Premier League. Keith Andrews has done a really good job. You think back to that first game of the season where Forest turned them over, and look at the direction of both teams since. They've gone. You wouldn't have thought that after match day 1, would you? But Keith Andrews has done a great job at Brentford. Just to give you a sense of how they are doing form-wise, of their last 10, even though they're 7th in the league, they've only won 5 of their last 10.
This is not a tribute to Morgan Gibbs-White.
No, they've lost 3 of the last 10, including the last one against Chelsea, and they've drawn a couple. They've kept 2 consecutive clean sheets at home against Sunderland and Spurs, but prior to that, they hadn't kept a clean sheet at home since August. So they do have a tendency to leak goals at home, but they've also got a tendency to score them at home as well, with Thiago up front. So it's going to be another tricky game, isn't it?
I can't see them leaking goals being a problem on Sunday. Can you? Do you know, I was thinking back to when we did the pod after the Brentford game and some of the things that we said. I remember making some kind of impassioned speech about how when all our players are fit and in form, how good we are. I remember Chelsea saying, we're not going down, are we? All that optimism, all that just joy at seeing them go out and perform the way they did in that game. And look at us now. Like, I bet Brentford are thinking, we're going to have a right good time on Sunday, aren't they? And they may well do. They may well do. Like, literally, Simon, who knows? Who knows what is going to happen on Sunday? You know, watching last night's game, listening to the boos talking about whether we should be looking for our 4th manager in a season, you wouldn't give us a cat in hell's chance of getting anything on Sunday. I hope that we show up. I hope that we remember who we are and what we do. And I hope that we are sitting here on Monday talking about the roller coaster and that we've had a good time. It's hard to imagine right now.
Yeah, as you know, Danny's coming down for the game on Sunday, and he's got a ticket in the home fans a couple of blocks away from the away fans. Bless him. A credit to him for wanting to do that, considering he's only 14. But we've had words about his behaviour, if you like, if and when goals go in. What's he going to do if Forest score? What's he going to do if Brentford score? And we've come up with a plan to be discreet either way, I think. But, you know, if Forest score, great. It depends who's playing up front. Is Jesus going to be fit? Is Lorenzo Luca going to be ready to start a game, considering he's only joined today? So is he going to have enough time to integrate into the squad to warrant a start? Who really knows? Moment. Taiwo as well, but even to be fair to Taiwo, he's not the same since he's had his injury, unfortunately, is he? So you do wonder what he can really offer. Hopefully it'll be something if he does play.
I mean, there must be a pun somewhere about the second coming to do with Jesus and Lorenzo Luca's side. I mean, what must the guy be thinking? I mean, there's a school of thought that says, well, I can't be any worse. So maybe he's thinking this is going to be great because expectations are so low. But then the flip side of that coin is we are holding out for a hero here, aren't we?
We are. And I do wonder whether we're holding out for too much, because I talked about on the last pod about him potentially having a few character issues. And I was reading up about him today in that in Italy, if players leave to go abroad and they get to the airport to travel, it's become customary for the said player to speak to the press as they're leaving Italy, leaving the country. That's just become an unwritten rule that's what you do now, even though you're not obliged to. But he left Napoli yesterday and he just ignored the press completely and just went straight through, which is quite within his right to do. If it's the culture or if it's the norm to say a few words of thanks to his current team, and he chose not to do that, again, does that raise a few character issues? But time will tell.
Absolutely. If he can score some goals, then I'll deal with that attitude and I'll embrace it, because good God, do we need someone to come and score some goals.
We do. Where's Mollo when you need him? Hey. But anyway, any final thoughts, Kate, before we draw to a close?
Final thoughts are, we're in the playoffs by the look of it, which potentially means another trip out to Europe. Now, whether or not I'll be able to go, I don't know. It will very much depend on the whens and the wheres. If it's a last hurrah, let's make it a good one. But we have to focus on the Premier League now. You know, it's a very popular phrase, isn't it? That it is our bread and butter, and it absolutely is our bread and butter. So we got to go to Brentford. We've got to try and cheer them on and hope that they give us something to cheer about, and that we don't feel compelled to boo or sing what the flipping heck was that nearly, at the end, and that this is as bad as it gets and it's up from here. Let's hope that. Let's go with that.
Onwards and upwards. I think we'll see what Brentford brings us. But in the meantime, everybody, thanks for listening, and we'll speak to you next week. And hopefully we'll talk about a win.